What if everything you thought you knew about Israel was only part of the story? Modern headlines focus on politics, borders, and conflicts, but the Israel of the Bible tells a far deeper, timeless truth. In this video, we journey beyond the modern nation-state to uncover the spiritual and historical Israel, the people called by God to carry His covenant, live His laws, and fulfill a divine mission that transcends land and politics. Prepare to see Israel through a lens few dare to explore, where faith, history, and destiny converge in ways that will challenge everything you think you know. The story of Israel is among the most enduring and complex narratives in human history. For many today, the name Israel immediately evokes the modern nation-state, with its geopolitical struggles, borders, and contemporary conflicts. Yet the Israel of the Bible is not merely a political entity. It is first and foremost a spiritual and covenantal concept, a people chosen by God to fulfill a divine purpose that transcends land, ethnicity, and time. To understand the real Israel, we must look beyond modern politics and rediscover Israel as revealed in Scripture, a people, a mission, and a story that continues to shape the spiritual destiny of the world. Israel in the Bible, a people, not just a place. The term Israel originates from the encounter of Jacob with God, after which he was renamed Israel, meaning he struggles with God, or God prevails. From Jacob's 12 sons arose the 12 tribes of Israel, forming a people bound together not just by blood, but by covenant, faith, and divine promise. This foundational understanding is essential. Biblical Israel is primarily a spiritual community chosen to reflect God's glory on earth, administer His laws, and preserve the knowledge of His covenant for generations to come. This perspective challenges the modern assumption that Israel is defined solely by geography or political authority. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes that God's covenant is with His people, not merely with a piece of land. While the land of Canaan is certainly significant, promised to Abraham and his descendants, the essence of Israel is relational and spiritual. The prophets, kings, and psalms frequently remind the Israelites that obedience, faith, and justice are the true markers of God's chosen people. Modern Israel versus biblical Israel. Today, when people speak of Israel, they often refer to the modern nation established in 1948. While this state carries the name, it is crucial to distinguish between the biblical vision of Israel and the political entity recognized internationally. Modern Israel exists within a complex geopolitical context, its policies, borders, and alliances shaped by global diplomacy, conflict, and historical necessity. Yet the Bible never presents Israel as a nation defined purely by human governance. The Real Israel, as described in Scripture, transcends nationality. Its identity is spiritual. It is defined by covenant, not citizenship, by obedience to God, not political power. Prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel often warned the Israelites that merely living in the land of promise would not ensure God's favor. Without faithfulness, even the chosen people could fall into exile. In other words, biblical Israel is a covenantal community, first, a land-based entity, second. The covenant, Israel's defining feature. At the heart of Israel's identity lies the covenant God established with Abraham, renewed through Isaac, Jacob, and the entire nation. This covenant is multidimensional. It is a promise of descendants, a sacred land, and most importantly, a divine purpose. God's covenant called Israel to be a light to the nations, exemplifying justice, mercy, and devotion to the one true God. The covenant is what separates biblical Israel from modern political definitions. It is not bound by borders, military strength, or international recognition. Rather, it is bound by obedience, holiness, and faithfulness. When God spoke to Moses at Sinai, giving the law, He clarified that Israel's greatness was not to be measured by worldly power, but by their willingness to live according to divine instruction. The law, the prophets, and the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Scriptures collectively stress that Israel's role is to embody God's principles and represent His truth to the nations. Prophetic warnings and promises. The prophets of Israel constantly reminded the people that their identity and destiny were inseparable from righteousness. Isaiah prophesied that Israel would be a light to the nations, calling all peoples to the knowledge of God. Jeremiah lamented the exile of Israel, not simply because of the loss of land, but because of the spiritual failure of the people to live according to God's covenant. Ezekiel's visions of the restored Israel emphasize a spiritual renewal, where God's people are recreated in righteousness and obedience, ready to fulfill their divine purpose. These prophecies reveal a critical point. Israel's real significance is theological and spiritual. The physical land, while promised and sacred, is secondary to the covenantal relationship between God and His people. Modern political Israel may occupy much of the same territory, but its challenges, debates, and conflicts cannot fully define the biblical Israel, which exists primarily in God's plan for redemption and moral witness to the world. Israel as a model for humanity. The biblical Israel is more than a historical or spiritual curiosity. It serves as a model for understanding God's interaction with humanity. Israel demonstrates how a chosen people navigate the tension between divine calling and human freedom, between obedience and rebellion. Their story reflects broader truths about human responsibility, the consequences of moral failure, and the hope of restoration. For instance, the exile of the northern kingdom of Israel and the later Babylonian exile of Judah show that God's promises are never unconditional in the sense of ignoring human choices. Faithfulness, justice, and devotion are required. Conversely, the return from exile, the rebuilding of the temple, and the prophetic vision of a renewed Israel show God's enduring commitment to His covenant. In this way, Israel becomes a mirror for all nations, showing the consequences of disobedience and the blessings of alignment with divine purpose. Spiritual Israel in the New Testament. The New Testament further expands the concept of Israel beyond ethnicity. Paul, in particular, emphasizes that true Israel consists of those who belong to God through faith, whether Jew or Gentile. Romans 9-11 explores the idea of spiritual Israel, suggesting that God's promises extend beyond physical descent to those who share in His covenant through faith. This theological development underscores that Israel is ultimately about relationship with God rather than nationality alone. Jesus Himself reinforces this understanding. While He ministered primarily among the Jewish people of His time, He consistently emphasized the spirit of the law over its mere letter, the heart of the covenant over its external observances. In doing so, He framed Israel's mission as one of universal significance, offering a light and example to all nations, a theme that stretches far beyond the borders of any single modern state. Misconceptions and modern narratives. Many misconceptions about Israel arise from equating the biblical and modern realities. Headlines often conflate political decisions with divine promise, assuming that contemporary Israel fully embodies the biblical vision. While modern Israel carries forward cultural and historical legacies, it does not automatically fulfill the covenantal responsibilities outlined in Scripture. Likewise, critics sometimes dismiss Israel's significance entirely by viewing it solely as a geopolitical construct, missing its deeper spiritual and historical dimensions. Understanding Israel biblically requires separating politics from covenant, history from prophecy, and nationality from faith. It means recognizing that Israel's ultimate role is to serve as a moral, spiritual, and divine example, not simply as a state among nations. the land and its significance. While Israel as a people is primary, the land of Israel is not irrelevant. The Promised Land serves as a tangible symbol of God's covenant, a context for His people's obedience, and a stage for historical events that shape divine history. From Abraham's journey to the conquest under Joshua, from the kingdom of David and Solomon to the Babylonian exile, the land has witnessed the unfolding story of God's covenant. Yet, Scripture repeatedly reminds readers that occupying the land without faithfulness brings judgment rather than blessing. The land is sacred, but it is the people's devotion that makes it truly holy. Israel today, a spiritual perspective. When looking at modern Israel, a biblical lens invites a broader perspective. Yes, Israel is a nation with borders, politics, and international concerns, but its ultimate significance is spiritual. Modern Israel can be seen as a continuation of history, culture, and identity. Yet the biblical Israel's enduring meaning is found in covenantal faithfulness, moral witness, and divine purpose. For believers, scholars, and seekers of truth, this perspective encourages discernment. Love for the land or admiration for modern achievements should not obscure the spiritual and historical realities that define Israel in Scripture. The real Israel is measured by obedience, justice, and the fulfillment of God's promises through faith, not solely by military strength, political recognition, or territorial control. Israel and the nations. Biblical Israel was never meant to exist in isolation. Its mission was outward-facing, to exemplify God's justice, mercy, and truth to the nations. Prophets envisioned a world where Israel's light would draw all peoples to God, creating a spiritual influence that surpasses geographical or political boundaries. This vision highlights Israel's role as a moral and spiritual exemplar, reminding us that the significance of Israel lies in its covenantal mission rather than in modern geopolitics. The concept of Israel has long captivated the imagination of historians, theologians, and ordinary people alike. Today, when the name Israel is mentioned, it often evokes images of a modern nation-state, political debates, or military conflicts. Yet, the Israel described in the Bible is far deeper, richer, and far more complex than modern headlines suggest. Biblical Israel is a people, a spiritual covenant, and a mission that transcends borders, politics, and even time itself. To truly understand Israel, we must rediscover it, not as a contemporary political entity, but as a divine institution with eternal significance. The origins of Israel, from Jacob to a covenant people. The story of Israel begins with Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, who wrestled with God and was renamed Israel, meaning he struggles with God, or God prevails. This renaming was more than symbolic. It signaled the birth of a people chosen to engage in a unique covenantal relationship with God. Jacob's 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel, forming a community bound not merely by lineage, but by a shared spiritual purpose. This foundational moment sets the tone for understanding Israel. The Bible emphasizes that Israel's identity is not solely geographical or political. It is primarily spiritual. The covenant established with Abraham and reaffirmed through Isaac and Jacob defines Israel as a people set apart to fulfill God's purposes on earth. This distinction between spiritual identity and territorial existence is critical. While the land of Canaan is sacred and promised, the essence of Israel lies in its covenantal relationship with God. Israel as a spiritual, not political entity. Modern perceptions often conflate Israel with a contemporary nation-state established in 1948. Political borders, international recognition, and national governance dominate discussions about Israel today. While these aspects are important in the modern world, they do not fully capture the Israel of the Bible. Biblical Israel is defined by faith, obedience, and divine purpose. The land is significant, but it is secondary to the people's fidelity to God's covenant. From the time of Moses to the prophetic era, Israel was repeatedly reminded that mere occupation of the promised land without faithfulness would bring judgment rather than blessing. In other words, Israel's significance is measured not by territorial control or military might, but by spiritual alignment with God's laws and promises. The covenant, Israel's defining feature. The covenant between God and Israel is the foundation of the nation's identity. This covenant is multifaceted, encompassing promises of descendants, land, and divine guidance. More importantly, it carries a moral and spiritual responsibility. Israel is called to be a light to the nations, to exemplify justice, mercy, and devotion to God. Prophets, kings, and priests reinforced that the covenant was conditional upon obedience. The law given to Moses was not merely a set of rules, but a guide for living as God's chosen people. Observance of the covenant was meant to shape Israel into a moral exemplar for the world. When Israel succeeded, it became a beacon of God's presence. When it failed, it faced exile and judgment. This covenantal framework distinguishes biblical Israel from any modern political entity. Prophetic warnings and lessons. Throughout the Old Testament, prophets serve as both guides and challengers, reminding Israel of its divine calling and warning of the consequences of disobedience. Isaiah, for instance, envisioned Israel as a light to the nations, meant to draw all peoples toward God's truth. Jeremiah lamented the exile, emphasizing not just the loss of land, but the spiritual failure that led to it. Ezekiel's visions of a restored Israel highlight the transformative power of faithfulness and divine renewal. These prophetic messages underscore that Israel's real significance is moral and spiritual rather than merely geographic. The nation's role was never simply to exist within borders. It was to demonstrate God's justice, mercy, and truth in the world. Modern interpretations that equate Israel solely with political power risk missing this fundamental dimension. Israel as a model for humanity. The story of Israel is not only a narrative of a people or a nation. It is a model for understanding humanity's relationship with God. Israel's successes and failures illustrate universal principles. The consequences of moral failure, the blessings of obedience, and the enduring promise of restoration. The exiles of the northern kingdom of Israel and later of Judah reveal that God's favor is tied to righteousness. Conversely, the return from exile and the rebuilding of the temple exemplify divine mercy and the possibility of renewal. Israel serves as a moral mirror, showing the world that a nation or people may possess potential and privilege, but their true standing before God depends on their spiritual choices and covenantal faithfulness. The New Testament perspective, spiritual Israel. The New Testament expands the concept of Israel beyond ethnicity or national identity. Paul, in particular, emphasizes the idea of spiritual Israel, suggesting that God's promises extend to all who share in the covenant through faith, whether Jew or Gentile. In Romans 9-11, Paul discusses how the essence of Israel is found in its relationship with God, not merely in physical descent. Jesus, too, reinforced this perspective. His ministry focused on the heart of the law, prioritizing justice, mercy, and faithfulness over ritualistic observance. He positioned Israel's mission as one of universal significance, calling all nations to recognize and live according to God's truth. This understanding encourages a broader, more inclusive view of Israel as a spiritual community with a mission that transcends nationality. Misconceptions about Israel. One of the greatest challenges in understanding Israel today is the prevalence of misconceptions. Many assume that the modern nation-state fully embodies biblical Israel, while others dismiss Israel's spiritual significance, viewing it only through the lens of politics. Both perspectives are incomplete. To rediscover Israel, one must separate contemporary politics from covenantal identity. Israel is not defined solely by military power, borders, or international recognition. Instead, it is defined by faithfulness to God, adherence to the principles of justice and mercy, and fulfillment of a divine mission. Only by recognizing these dimensions can we appreciate the real Israel, as intended in Scripture. The land and its symbolism. While Israel as a people is paramount, the land itself holds profound significance. The Promised Land serves as a tangible symbol of God's covenant and a setting for historical events that shaped the spiritual journey of His people. From Abraham's journey to the conquests under Joshua, from David's kingdom to the Babylonian exile, the land witnessed the unfolding of God's covenantal plan. Yet the Bible consistently emphasizes that the land's blessing is contingent upon Israel's obedience. Possession alone does not guarantee divine favor. Righteousness and faithfulness do. The land and the people are intertwined, but it is the covenantal relationship with God that truly sanctifies Israel. Israel and the nations. Biblical Israel was never meant to exist in isolation. Its role was outward-facing, to demonstrate God's justice, mercy, and truth to the world. The prophets envisioned a future where Israel's light would draw all nations to God, highlighting Israel's purpose as a spiritual exemplar rather than a mere geopolitical actor. This vision reinforces the idea that Israel's true significance is universal. It was intended to influence all of humanity, guiding nations toward ethical and spiritual principles. The mission of Israel extends beyond modern politics, offering lessons in morality, justice, and divine purpose that remain relevant today. Modern Israel in light of biblical Israel. When viewing modern Israel through the biblical lens, several insights emerge. The contemporary state reflects historical and cultural continuities with the biblical narrative, yet it cannot fully encompass the spiritual and covenantal dimensions that define true Israel. Modern Israel faces geopolitical pressures, debates, and conflicts, but these do not necessarily measure its biblical fulfillment. For those seeking spiritual understanding, Israel must be considered beyond politics. Its significance lies in covenantal faithfulness, moral witness, and the ongoing role in God's redemptive plan. This perspective allows believers and scholars to appreciate Israel's deeper meaning and its place in the broader story of humanity and divine purpose. Rediscovering Israel today. Rediscovering the real Israel requires a shift in perspective. It requires moving beyond headlines and historical events to see the spiritual, moral, and covenantal dimensions of the people God chose. This Israel is defined by obedience, righteousness, and faithfulness. Its mission is to illuminate God's truth and extend His covenantal promises to the world. Studying Israel in this light offers profound insights. It reveals patterns of obedience and disobedience, divine judgment and mercy, exile and restoration, all of which carry timeless lessons for humanity. Israel's story becomes a guide for ethical living, spiritual dedication, and understanding the relationship between God and His people. Lessons from Israel for today. Rediscovering Israel also provides valuable lessons for contemporary life. First, it reminds us that identity and purpose are defined by moral and spiritual commitments, rather than external markers of power or success. Second, it shows that divine favor is connected to faithfulness, justice, and obedience. Third, it demonstrates that true influence extends beyond borders and politics, rooted instead in moral authority and covenantal fidelity. By examining Israel through Scripture, modern readers can grasp a vision of society and nationhood that transcends the transient concerns of politics. Israel's history, prophecies, and covenantal framework offer a blueprint for understanding how a people, or even individuals, can live in alignment with divine purpose. The eternal Israel. The Real Israel is not merely a modern nation or historical artifact. It is a spiritual reality, a covenantal people, and a divine mission. Rediscovering Israel involves moving beyond politics, borders, and contemporary debates to appreciate its deeper significance in God's plan. Biblical Israel is defined by covenant, obedience, and moral witness, serving as a model for humanity and a beacon of divine purpose. Modern Israel, while significant culturally and historically, is only a part of this larger story. The true Israel, timeless, covenantal, and spiritually profound, continues to illuminate the world, reminding us of God's promises, the importance of faithfulness, and the enduring power of divine purpose. To truly understand Israel is to see beyond maps and politics, to recognize a people called for a mission that transcends time, shaping the spiritual destiny of the world. Rediscovering Israel is therefore not just an exercise in history or theology. It is an invitation to engage with a narrative that has shaped humanity for millennia. It challenges us to look at faith, obedience, and divine purpose in a new light and to appreciate a people chosen to embody God's glory, justice, and mercy in the world. As we step back from the headlines and look through the lens of Scripture, the true Israel emerges, not defined by borders, politics, or modern conflicts, but by God's covenant, His promises, and His enduring purpose. Understanding this Israel reshapes how we see history, faith, and the unfolding story of humanity. If this journey opened your eyes to a deeper truth, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the hidden layers of biblical history. The real story of Israel is still unfolding, and now you're part of discovering it.